شهر فرنگ خوب تماشا کن، از همه رنگ خوب تماشا کن. رنگ و رنگ سبز و سرخ و بنفش و رنگه، گاهی پر رنگ گاه کم رنگه، گاهی کم رنگ و گاه شب رنگه. خوب تماشا کن شهر ما رو سیاحت کن، قصه داری فراموش کن قصه ما رو گو.
Truths, myths, and theories surrounding the spirit world. Guests include QAnon experts, investigators, debunkers, and skeptics of the supernatural, unexplained, and flat-out unimaginable. Content discussed on this show is not necessarily the opinion of the cast of spirits, quite often are for mature audiences only. This show is not intended to replace any medical, financial, or legal advice and is for entertainment purposes only. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Controversial truths, myths, and
If you were to give me and everyone who's here today the single best advice as to what to be in the moment, to really truly wholeheartedly speak, to be an uplifter in the moment to the core of your being, what would you say? Would there be a rampage? Would there be a dialogue? What can you offer us?
This is what we wish you to know. Your best focus, or work if you want to call it, or attention if you want to call it, in any moment in time, is to be advocating your best influence, which means it's your constant attention in the preparation and maintenance of your vibrational atmosphere. Because it's about reception, 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 which means it's about tuning, 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 which means it's about allowing the well-being. So it's about selectively sifting. And really, you know what it starts with? So this is the answer that your question is calling from us in a powerful way. Be nice to you. Be nice to you. Rest well. Eat well, get out where beautiful things are, play with people who are fun, think thoughts that feel good, watch movies that are uplifting. In other words, be nice to you. The other parts of it, the step 1 and the step 2, take care of themselves without you even needing to know what you're doing. But step 3, that receptive mode, you got to tend to it, which means be nice to yourself and quiet your mind every now and again. But be nice to yourselves. Think nice things about yourself and think nice things about others. Netflix sent Esther an email. They know her personally. With a recommendation of something that she might want to see. She looked at it and she said, "Do you even know who I am?" It was such an odd recommendation. And then she thought, I don't think that watching that would be conducive to me creating an environment where I am receiving and encouraging wonderful things. She could tell just by the title of it that it was going to make her guarded and defensive and worried about stuff. And so be nice to yourself. Advocate for yourself. One day, Esther was grumbling at Jerry about something. Hard for her to imagine now because she only remembers him as perfect now. Change that past. He was close to it, but he said to her one day when she was grumbling at him, "I think it would be nice if you would pretend that I'm Kate." And Kate at the time was their granddaughter, who was about 5 years old. And Esther did not have the ability or the capacity to think anything other than lovely thoughts about Kate. It couldn't happen. And Jerry thought that he would like to be held in that same light by Esther. And that's sort of what we're getting at. Pick your favorite whatever it is on the planet and pretend that you're it. And treat yourself as you would treat that. Be nice to yourself. And that will go the furthest of anything that you might do to creating this petri dish neutrality of an atmosphere that will allow yourself to be so receptive to the wisdom and the love that is naturally who you are.
I know everything is always working out for me 100% of the time. At the beginning of this year, something happened where there was an accident, quote unquote, that I was in, and I was on the phone with my friend Jenny at the time, and I said to her, you know, really don't know why this is happening, but I do know that it's happening for something much, much bigger than myself. So long story short, it went through the process, and from that I saw the law enforcement officers that are working for the Broward Sheriff's Office, and you know, this gentleman was there because I know he was meant to be there, but he didn't need to be there in that moment. He was working on other things, but because of this thing that happened through the fault of someone else, he was there, and he came over, and he did what he needed to do. And I received something in the middle of it, and I'm like, I'm here because I'm meant to be here to see what these men and women do every day. He was working on something else. He came over to help me. The stress that was created through the fault of someone else, and me being there seeing that, was such a huge awareness. I was never in that space before. It was always, oh my gosh, a car accident or this, and the cooperative components of everyone that showed up that day.
Give us a little more, because you said it twice. What do you mean by the fault of someone else?
I attracted what happened to me, the cab driver. I take responsibility wholeheartedly.
But what did you mean? You said it twice. What did you mean by the fault of someone else?
So the cab driver reversed into me. And I got out of the car, and he tried to drive off.
So the cab driver had an experience with a cooperative component that was me.
Yes, 100%.
We just want to play with that a little bit, because we're speaking right to where you're going. Co-creative moments happen. If we're going to take your premise, and we are, and we're going to agree with you, and we are, that things are always working out for you, and they are, then is there ever a moment in time when it's accurate to point at fault? Because doesn't fault indicate something asserting itself into my experience, and doesn't that defy the laws of the universe as you know it to be?
I guess the words were playing on what was in a report from insurance and law enforcement.
We understand that, but we want to go with the whole premise of this whole idea that you're unfolding here with us. We want to acknowledge that cooperative components all around, everyone a cooperative component, because the way you started this conversation and what you were laying out is that things always happen for a reason, and we want to stick in there. Things always happen for a good reason. There's always some value in something that is happening. And if you start with that premise, then doesn't that automatically take out of the equation for yourself that happened because of the fault of someone else? There can't be a rendezvous with someone unless there's more than one of you there. If that cab driver had, in his faulty nature, just been driving around backwards and there'd been no one for him to run into, then there wouldn't have been an accident. So aren't you equally responsible? Why in the world would you put yourself somewhere where somebody's going to back into you? If we're really going to start talking about that sort of stuff, and do you think that both of you created that so that the police officers would have a job? Because if none of you were doing any of that, then what would he be doing? Just wandering around on the freeways? He'd have no reason for living. We're just emphasizing that we're all in this together thing that we started with earlier. We are all in this together.
My angel, the hotel manager, had video surveillance, and I was very much humbled through that experience and through everything, knowing that it was working out for the highest and best of everyone involved. I felt inspired through that to see what these men and women do, and I've now created a non-for-profit organization entitled We Love BSO Day to really create a magical day of appreciation and love for the Broward Sheriff's Office, and I realized that's why I was there that day.
Well, we'd like that the universe gives you endless opportunities to appreciate one another. And we jumped into this in a different way than you expected us to. And the reason that we did is because we want you to realize, because you're talking about now. We're talking about now, the importance of now. And when you have made it your point, which was the answer to the most important question that you set forward here today, what would we encourage you to do? What matters most? And we said it's the accomplishment and the maintenance of your vibrational alignment with who you are, so that you're consistently tuned in, tapped in, turned on, which means you've got this non-physical energy pouring through you so that your influence, moment by moment by moment, is dominant. And what is that influence? Well, it's an influence that is as vast as the details of the people whom you're interacting with. It's fun to look around for causes, and it's really fun to find one, something that you can specifically flow your energy toward. And we understand how satisfying that can be. But we want you to broaden your scope on that just a little bit and feel how fantastically satisfying it can be to move around in your human body, in your powerful now, connected with source energy, who knows everything about you and everything about your relationship with everything else and everything about everybody around you and everything about their relationship with everything else. And you follow those feelings of inspiration for that constant state of upliftment that's being offered. That feeling of finding a cause and being able to focus toward it is the way your inner being feels about you all the time. You're always moving around. And do you know what the dominant intent of your inner being, who shines through you, is in every moment of every day? To influence those who are around you back to their natural state of well-being. And so just you being in that state of well-being is you answering your cause. You being in that open state, just a smile across a hallway to someone that, in other words, we're not for a moment suggesting that it isn't wonderful that you've set this thing in motion and that you've got this thing going. We just don't want you to underestimate the glances across the room or the comments just in the right place. When you've got source energy pouring through you, you are answering your call and promoting your cause every moment that you're moving through populations of people. It's so natural for you to feel good, and yet you're helping us to say something here that matters a lot. It's so natural to feel good, and yet it feels like you need a flag, and you need a cause, and you need a sign, and you need a day, and you need a monument. And we just want to say, we think it's a little wacky. That just natural well-being doesn't seem like it's enough. But it speaks to how people get away from that. Oh, I had this tuned in moment and these wonderful things happened. It was the weirdest thing, you say. And what we want to hear you say is, yeah, everything is always working out for me, and lots of different things are happening, but it's always working out for me. And most of all, I'm having way fun. Way.
I love the idea of people taking time out of their lives to prove to themselves that if they're defined by the vision of the future, then they're not living by the memories of the past. And that's where the unknown exists. So many people, the unknown is a scary place. So they don't see that future because they're used to seeing that future with evidence, with their senses. And you have to be able to get beyond that and stay in the unknown, stay in that discomfort, and then in that moment to begin to self-regulate. Like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little anxiety. Ooh, I'm starting to feel a little frustration. That's the defining moment where your body's going back to the past, because emotions are a record of the past. Or you go into routine again. So you catch yourself. It's a victory. And if you keep catching yourself, those victories add up. And it's not so much about your wealth or your health or your freedom or your new relationship. It's actually about who you become. And so overcoming the old self allows us to become somebody else. And there is that period of transition. I call it the void, where there's just not a lot happening. And you just got to be able to keep going and continuously get to the end of your belief, where most people stop. I just had a fabulous conversation with someone this weekend. Broke through to the other side, and now there's so much magic happening around this person, but she's worthy now to receive it. And that that is the key, because the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving. So we got to become initiated into this and understand it. Thousands of years of programming that says that we have to change things matter to matter, you know, in three-dimensional reality, and it will take time, but to begin to connect to that resource called the quantum field and create from the field instead of from matter, there's a lot of unlearning that has to go on.
Absolutely. And when you're catching yourself, what are you doing? Are you writing that down? Are you noting that down? Are you making a mental note? Like, practically, what is someone having to do to, once they catch it, then how do you deal with that emotion and anxiety in the moment that feels so heavy, that feels so real and trapping? And like you said, I was at the Facebook headquarters in Menlo Park a couple of weeks ago. I was testing out their new Oculus range of virtual reality. And all the studies behind virtual reality show now that you feel the same experience of hanging off the edge of a cliff in virtual reality, and your body displays the same symptoms as they would if you were actually hanging off a cliff. So just showing how imagination does mirror the other way too through virtual reality. But how that feels so real. Like our body gets, when you're stepping out off the ledge, you're doing it as if it's reality. And so that anxiety feels so real. What do you do after catching it? What happens to that emotion?
Well, you know, just like anything else, Jay, I mean, it's just like hitting a golf ball, you get back into a bad habit again, you know? You have to really begin to mentally rehearse. Like, so you ask yourself at the end of your day, I do this every day, how'd I do? How'd I do today, bro? How'd you do? Did you do good? Where'd you fall from grace? What was it that caused you to go unconscious for the rest of the day? Like, what was that moment? Now, if you're a student of life, you'll begin to contemplate, well, it was that person that said that thing, then I reacted, or I got this email, or things didn't go my way, and I started feeling angry or frustrated or fearful. The next time that happens, how could I involve my experience? Now, you may have to search for some answers of the best model to build, or you may actually have a long contemplation and start to go, God, the next time that happens, I think I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to plan my behaviors. And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing what you're going to do begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you already did it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep installing that hardware, the hardware will become a software program, which means you'll just start acting like a happy person. Why? There's no magic there. You installed the circuitry. So that's more important than the news.
Right.
It's more important than answering any email or any text. It's more important than talking about your past or some dinner. If you can begin to just think about how you're going to do it differently, that's the building process neurologically already. So now you have to get conscious in order to do that. And it takes some time. It means you got to shut your cell phone off. You got to close your door. You got to take a break from everything out there and begin to practice. And so by experience then, you start noticing, oh, here it comes the frustration, here comes the fear. And now we've given people the tools to be able to self-regulate, to create brain and heart coherence. And so you see people say, excuse me 1 minute, I just need a minute. They take some breaths, they get back in, they connect to the energy of their future. This is incidental compared to where they're going. So they don't fall from grace. They don't allow their energy to drop. And so, in the beginning, it takes a lot, because it takes a lot of energy and awareness to stay conscious and not go unconscious. But if you're persistent and you're determined and you're sincere, you begin to figure it out. You begin to say, I am not going to give my power away to that person or that circumstance when I can use it to heal or to create a new future. And so people then won't excuse themselves and say, I had a hard day yesterday, I had a fight with my coworker or my ex, and I don't feel like doing the work. Well, that's the time to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
Because it's all of those times that we self-correct. Those are the most valuable moments to us. People who've had profoundly transcendental experiences where they we say got lit up, they connected, and their brain goes into very, very high coherent states and super gamma patterns that are way outside of normal, and they have a transcendental download or connection that's mystical. They look back at their entire life. They don't want to change one thing in their past because it got them to that moment. That's the moment the past no longer exists. Now, by the same means, they look back at their past and they see all those tough moments where they overcame themselves and they fall in love with that person. They don't look at the good meditations or the things that went well. They know that it was those moments that got them to this moment. And I think then that's when they begin to understand that all of the hard work, all the effort in who we become makes, no one can take that away from us. So then once we arrive at that level and we experience whatever the dream is or whatever we create, the next thing is do it until you fully enjoy it. And then when it gets boring or predictable, let's go again. Let's do something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's evolution.